people come in, great.
Ah, nice. Okay, we have more people now.
A bit more.
All right. Perhaps I'll get started. I'll do a quick introduction about myself, and I'll give a quick introduction about the company. But I would like to make this whole presentation really conversational. So if at any time you guys have any questions, please feel free to just interrupt me, and I'm happy to answer any questions. So a bit of a introduction about myself. Hi everyone, my name is Feng Ru, and I'm the CEO of Turtle Tree Labs. I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with what we do, but we are the first biotech company in the world, based here in Singapore and in San Francisco. And we are able to use cell biology to produce real milk. So our technology is able to produce milk from all mammals. You can imagine goats, sheep, camels, cows, and even human milk. And human milk is where a lot of our partners are super interested in. I'll dive a little deeper into who these partners are, how we go to market, and what the technology is. But first, really just want to introduce myself first. So I'll maybe start with the company first. Sorry, we started the company in January 2019. So it's almost 2 years now. When we first started, perhaps I'll start with the how the company started. My background has always been in tech. I used to work for Salesforce and Google, but many years ago, as a hobby, I was learning how to make cheese. So I went around the region. I was in Indonesia, I was in Thailand, trying to look for good sources of raw milk. But it was quite difficult to do that. I think Jay, you might know I was actually in Malang. I'm not sure if you've been there. I was in Malang. I went to even the Greenfields farms. I went to some private farms, but there were lots of problems, challenges with contract farming. As a result, I mean, not directly at any company, but as a result, generally the milk that we get from the region is always not ideal. And I know good milk, right? Because I was even in Vermont some time ago for a few weeks learning how to make cheese. So I know how good cheese, how good milk should perform when it comes to making cheese. And coming back to Asia, it was just not possible to replicate the quality of the cheeses that I could make. So back then, I was still working for Google. And that was when I met my co founder, Max, at Google. He was still a CEO of a different tech company back then. And he was at my office sharing about different technologies, cutting edge tech, AI, machine learning. And some of the technologies that he shared were companies like Memphis Meats and Blue Nalu. These companies are really special. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of these cell based meat companies, but what they're doing is they're able to get cells directly from the animal just once, but they're able to grow these cells to a large number and then pressing these cells into a patty and eating it. So essentially, they could create meat without going through the entire animal, without having to raise the entire cattle, without having to harm the environment. So he was sharing about these technologies, and it was really intriguing for me. After the talk, I went to him and asked him if there are similar methods to make milk, because I wanted to make cheese, right? And back then, obviously, there were no other companies doing it. So we did a lot of research around the area. We pulled in some scientist friends. And last year, we managed to make some breakthroughs. We filed our patents. And now, Turtle Tree Labs, we have a team of 20 full time scientists and engineers across 6 different teams and just accelerating our progress. So this year has been the difficult year for everyone, right? It's COVID, but for the cell-based food companies, for the alternative protein companies, being based here in Singapore, to be honest, it kind of helped the government, people to recognize the need for food security. As we know, during the heat of it, Singapore had a food security challenge. ESG as well as EDB. I know my friends from these agencies had to go around the world trying to source for alternative sources of simple things like eggs, flour, and even rice. We even had to buy some eggs from Ukraine, all the way from Ukraine. And of course, we've all heard about the challenges about around sourcing eggs from Thailand even. So really it helped the food tech startups, the food tech businesses in Singapore um, when COVID hit, because now the spotlight is on us to accelerate. And so far, the Singapore government has been really supportive for us. We've got the Singapore Food Agency, we've got Enterprise Singapore, EDB, A Star, our National Research Institute, aligned behind all these food tech businesses to help us to accelerate our path to market. So our path to market would require regulatory support, it would require governmental support, as well as collaborations with industry. And all this has been really helpful for us from the support from the Singapore government. So this year we've been really lucky as well. We won the Temasek Livability Award. So that was a challenge set up by Temasek. We also won the Entrepreneurship World Cup that happened a few weeks ago. But at the end of the day, we're very lucky to get access to these international platforms to highlight the need for food security. As we welcome the next billion people coming onto this planet, we need to find other methods of continue feeding the people without harming the planet or the animals. So I'll pause right here and open the floor to the audience. Do you guys have any questions as to what Turtle Tree does, or some or the technology or anything at all?
Any questions from the rest? If not, I'll have one question. Would be when you have this, how did, let's say, get A star support and all that? How that whole thing just all come in together?
Sure. So for us, we were quite fortunate because I'm Singaporean. So naturally, the A Star folks reached out, and they want to try to work with local SMEs. So we've been connected with quite a few scientists who connected us with other scientists, and we now have a 2 to 3 collaborations with A Star to help us accelerate our R&D. For those people or people out there who want to connect with the right folks on in A Star, you can reach out to me. I can help to brainstorm or point you the right direction. A Star is a massive institute. I know it can get quite intimidating, but I mean, people have pointed me the right direction. I'm happy to do the same for anyone.
Nice.
Right.
And
All right. Let me continue.
yeah,
So I guess really today's discussion wanted to sort of have me share a little bit about my corporate experience and how that has sort of contrasted a little bit with my startup experience. So my background has always been in big MNCs, starting from UL. UL is Underwriters Laboratories. It's an American standards company. If you look at the back of your TV screen or the back of your hair dryer, you will see logos like UCC, SCC, or UL. So these are standard safety standard companies. So when I was working for UL, I was in the transaction security business, which means that I was helping companies and banks like Visa, MasterCard comply with international standards so that your Visa card that was issued in Singapore can work in the Visa ATM or unit in Europe. I spent quite a number of years at UL, and when I first joined UL, actually it wasn't UL yet. I joined a smaller company, a Dutch company called Collis, that got acquired by UL, and that Dutch company was really interesting. When I joined as a fresh grad, there were about 200 people worldwide, but the company was run so professionally. I learned quite a lot about the right way to run a business back then, and how a company that can scale should look like. So although there were only 200 people, but everything was very well organized in Dutch fashion. The folders of the company, the intranet back then, was super well organized. Every proposal that goes out had to go through the CEO. He would check everything that goes out just to make sure that the pricing looks right, the format looks right. Although it sounds like very time consuming, but these little things I realize really set the company up to look super professional. And as a result, UL bought over this company of a few years later, after I joined, and it could ramp up very fast. It could sort of integrate into the UL's ecosystem fairly smoothly, just because all the processes, HR, sales, ops, everything was so well organized, and it was already teed up for scale. So after I left the UL, I had the opportunity to join Salesforce for 3.5 years. That was when I really learned quite a lot in my career. If for those who don't know, Salesforce is a tech company based out of San Francisco, and they are the biggest CRM company in the world. And Salesforce is all about storytelling, right? Although they're selling CRM, but how they position themselves is a customer success company. And that was where I learned the importance of storytelling. We're not selling a CRM, we are selling customer success. So when it comes to customer success, there are different parts to it. There are things like a CRM, there are things like a customer engagement platform, or a customer help desk platform, or even an e-commerce platform. So all these are different touch points that a business need to go through to engage with the customers. And because they widen this entire story, and they could build such a good customer relationship, they really build a really good, strong product lined up, and a whole fan base behind Salesforce. So if you guys know, every year Salesforce has an event called Dreamforce, and usually the whole city would be filled up the entire week, and they even have celebrities. I think Michelle Obama, or even some singers, to speak, to perform, really to engage the community and get them excited about doing business with each other and with Salesforce. And one thing that Salesforce did, and I'm trying to replicate that in Turtle Tree, is they have a 1-1-1 model. So they believe that for every dollar that they earn, or every $100 that they earn, $1 would go back into the community, or go back into giving back. So 1% of revenue, 1% of employees' time. So they want to encourage 1% of employees' time uh, to be doing volunteering, and also 1% of their products would be given out as for not-for-profits. So really, this model allows employees to have a bigger goal. Really, it helps to paint that picture and encourage employee retention, because we're not just working for Salesforce, we are working for a bigger good. And it really helps us to build a good bonding between our teammates when we go for volunteering as well. So in my time in Salesforce, I volunteered locally with Willing Hearts. So obviously we cut the vegetables, and we also volunteered at some CC community center. We hung out with some older senior citizens, spent some days with them. That was quite meaningful. Another one was I did my own overseas trip. So it doesn't have to be like a Salesforce sanctioned event. What I did one year was I went with a bunch of national junior college students to some islands to do volunteering there as well, to pick up rubbish and to engage with the community there. So it's really meaningful, because you get to engage with whichever community you feel very strongly about. When you come back, you share that story with your colleagues back at work, and it really builds a super strong bond within the entire organization. And after that, after Salesforce, I went to Google. So at Google, it's all about skill. I learned what skill looks like, and without having to kind of lose the essence of what a startup means. Google is able to kind of break everything down into smaller teams and allow everyone to have a type of ownership to their own business, whichever business it is. Um, so in Google, it's all about 10x, right? So for example, back then I was covering the Taiwan market um, for Google Cloud. So that was my area of remit, and I had the budget, I had the autonomy to run my own business. So we ran events with our local partners. We ran events with local community of fan groups, so that we are able to spread the message one to many. So all these small exercises and all these small events help me to recognize the importance of skill, and that every effort that you put in, you should think about how it can have a ripple effect to make a larger impact. And that drove down to how I wanted to go to market with Turtle Tree. When we first started at Turtle Tree, there was the big debate, right? Do we go to market with our own product, or do we go on a B2B model? So going through our own product, like a brand like Oatly, sounds really exciting, and Oatly is doing so well. But we quickly realized that there is a lot of marketing dollar that is required for Oatly. And for us, we wanted to focus more on the technology, focus on what we are good at instead of marketing. So because we're a deep tech company, we are a biotech company, we wanted to focus on iterating on the science, improving on the science. So we went to market on a B2B model. So at the end of the day, we want to work with the Nestle's, the Dannons, the Unilevers, the Mead Johnsons, the Abbotts, to enable them to source milk ingredients or milk products through Turtle Tree methods. And at the end of the day, we envision ourselves to be like an organic logo at the bottom of a carton of milk that goes out. Instead of that, we have a Turtle Tree logo. So it symbolizes how the milk is made, a circular economy, and really the quality of the product that is inside, say, a Unilever product. So this allows us to have a larger impact from two or three locations, say in Singapore, in the US. We are able to have a global widespread impact with our tech. And all these companies, they have tens of years of experience knowing their consumers. So we don't want to see as being competitors to them. We want to work with them, which is why we want to focus on a B2B model. So again, I'll pause here. Do you guys have any questions or anything you want to share about your own experience?
Oh, great. I think the three corporate experiences just give you different aspects of what you need to get your startup started to different stages, and even scaling 10x. And I believe, the journey probably just started, getting out there to the market, etc., getting customers interested in what Data Tree does. And I just want to share what is something about the culture that you've learned from this corporate experiences that help define the culture at Data Tree Labs.
Sure. So from these, especially Salesforce and Google, right? It was a very flat hierarchy. Even at UL, back at Collist, it was very flat hierarchy. So the way they kept it quite lean is they have small teams that would go directly to customers. So they remove less layers in between management and customer. So we are very customer driven, even at Turtle Tree Labs, which is why even from the first days that we started the company, we started talking to customers, and very fast we would focus our product development, our technologies on what the customer want, and we kept the hierarchy quite flat. Like I said, we had 6 different teams. ranging from science teams to business development teams, who would come together to address the customer's needs. So really, we try to put the customers at the heart of everything we do, and the whole team in parallel would come to address all these needs.
And were there any challenges trying to implement it, given that I believe the whole team majority are all in Singapore and we may not have this corporate experience? How could you then overcome this and try to gel it together into the company?
I think the team is still young at Turtle Tree, so we are all still learning. It's such a good atmosphere in the office. We were just chatting, strategizing all the time together. So, and I think quite fortunate for us as well. These corporates that we are engaging with are super interested in our novel technology. It's a new way of approaching the same challenge that they have been working with over the past decades. So this startup culture, this startup environment sort of trickles down to them as well. So the way we engage is really a super learning experience, corporates and Turtle Tree. And we are working in collaboration to help push this technology forward. So I guess the culture was really from the fact that, I mean, we are a startup, we're still learning, and so is the corporate, and everyone is just coming from that point and trying to aim for that same goal of a more sustainable way of producing nutrients as well as I mean, milk products.
Thanks. Anyone else have any questions you want to ask about maybe corporate experiences and how that could help your startup?
Hi, Lynn. This is Jay speaking. Can I ask something? It's maybe it's not really important, but I just like curious about this. So, is there any behind the story behind the choosing name of Turtle Tree as your brand, as your startup name? As well as another question is like, have you ever faced any complaint from your customers, and like how you tackle that things? Thank
Sure.
you.
So the first question first, Turtle Tree, what does it mean, right? So if you look at the logo, it looks like the cross section of a tree. It looks like tree rings. It also looks like thumbprint, right? So it symbolizes man's print on nature. Turtles and trees are symbols of longevity, and we believe in the longevity of the planet and its animals. So I hope that answers your question. As with regards to complaints from customer, so fortunately, currently we haven't signed any. I mean, we are pre-revenue, right? So we are still in R&D stage. So we haven't necessarily had any complaints from our customers. But when I did back at Salesforce or back at Google, usually we try to understand where the customer is coming from. We will listen to them, address what their challenges are, and we'll try to help them to think through it or solve it. Let me try to think of an example. Um, So for example, when we were kind of selling Salesforce, there could be some customers who said, "Oh, the implementation was not what I expected." So we will try to understand from the customer point of view which is the area that they would not that happy with, and identify the source of the problem. Was it a problem with the software, or was it a problem with implementation, or was the needs not communicated across? So I think when it comes to executing any project, it is extremely important to document the milestones as well as the timeline very carefully. So everyone has an agreed cost of executables and who the owners are. So sometimes it might be the customers. Uh, Sometimes the customer have also some misunderstandings on the deliverables. So it's really quite important to document all of that, to address them right from the start. but it's quite normal to have certain disagreements, as long as we are able to be to understand where they're coming from and come from a respectable angle. Usually most of the problems can be solved.
Thank you, Lynn.
Any other questions? No? Okay, I'll move on. So, what sparked this idea? I guess I covered a little bit of it during my introduction just now. That was me learning how to make cheddar cheese at Vermont, and that was at a cheese factory. It was backbreaking work. You have to flip the cheese multiple times, and these are quite heavy blocks to press the whey out. And during this whole journey, as I mentioned, I was really exposed to all the contract farming, all the hormones that are being pumped into the cows. So, which is why when I heard about the idea to create milk using cells, I thought that was brilliant and a very exciting way moving forward. So perhaps I can sort of touch a little bit on the corporate versus startup world. The corporate world obviously is a lot more structured. There is a process to everything. When you want to apply for leave, there's a process. When you want to apply for, say, a budget to run an event, there is a process. For startups, it's a lot more flexible, and we really start because it's the whole organization is so flat. We just start with the customer or the needs in mind. So instead of thinking about instead of breaking all the whole process down to different little parts for different teams to work on, our whole team is working on it together all the time. There are pros and cons to each, but really it's I was very fortunate because I have quite a number of years of corporate experience before I started this company. So I was able to bring some of those experiences to Turtle Tree Labs. As a result, we have a lot of good structures in place. The different teams that are set up to be able to work in parallel. We have a CRM in place. We also have an online cloud platform called Benchling that allows our scientists to upload all their experiments as well as the results of the experiments onto that cloud platform. So the entire team, global science teams can work together and project manage the whole thing. As a result, we are set up for scale. So if if one day we want to sort of set up a new lab in a different part of the world, we can do it fairly quickly because all the processes are on the cloud. So all of these experiences from my corporate life allowed me to kind of bring these practices, these best practices to Turtle Tree Labs. So turning into Turtle Tree Labs, I guess some of the early challenges that Max and I face was that although we are a biotech startup, but we don't have a science background, we are not scientists. And some of the investors were asking us, well, you're not a scientist. How are you running a biotech startup? So now, I mean, 2 years on, we are recognizing that it's precisely because we are not scientists. That's why we have the bandwidth to talk to different people and try to bring the best technologies into Turtle Tree. So this is very important because sometimes we have observed that if I'm a scientist, I can do something really well, but I might be quite precious about a certain technology, and it's not a good idea to try to sell a technology. As I mentioned just now, we are selling customer success. We want to be able to work with the customer, understand their needs, and be relentlessly relevant to what the customer wants. If we're trying to sell a tech that the customer doesn't need, and we don't try to find a good fit, that's where we will be building a tech that is irrelevant for industry. When it comes to price points, when it comes to yield, when it comes to quality of the product, it all depends on what the customer wants and not what that technology can produce. So because we're not scientists, we have been able to talk to collaborators from the US, collaborators from Europe, collaborators from A-Star here, and bring in the best technologies, the best people here to help us to accelerate our R&D process, which is why at this point in time, we have a pretty clear and accelerated path to execution. So some of the current challenges is, of course, the high cost of innovation, but that is the case for most biotech startups or biotech businesses. So Max and I have to be quite creative as to the kind of other partners that we partner up with. And really, our goal is to find the best partners globally to help enable our go-to-market. So I guess as a final note to all you guys, all you young people out there, I would encourage you guys to broaden your experiences. One thing I wish I did back in university was to do more internships. I did too, but I wish I did more, because of all the companies that I went to, I learned so many different things, from how they were running the business, the processes that were involved, the different people that are involved in, say, FMCG companies versus tech companies. Interacting with them, I could understand the different ways that people work. So I would encourage all of you to try to broaden your experiences, either through internships or different work experiences. Another thing is to find more mentors and advisors. That is what Max and I have been doing as well, just so that we can get a reality check, always check back on whether or not we're on the right path. Because these people, they have several more years of experience or decades of experience more than us, and definitely can teach us a thing or two. Yeah, so I again open up the floor to more questions.
Right. So we have one question from Anna. Anna is joining us from YouTube. And she asks, what are your top 3 recommendations for female founders working in deep tech?
So I think it would, my recommendation would be kind of generic to most founders. Because my experience as a female founder has been, I've been really fortunate. I know there are other parts of the world or perhaps other companies where female leaders or female founders might face some challenges. But my experience so far has been super good. Being in Singapore environment, it's quite equal for me. I don't feel marginalized or anything. And our team have a 50-50 divide here at Turtle Tree. So I don't really have gone through any difficult or testing challenges. But general advice for deep tech founders is try to talk to as many people as possible. When I first started the company, I started a company through, on top of friends and people we know, a lot of it is through LinkedIn. So I would have a question, perhaps in a certain specific knowledge domain, and I'll search online to see who that pro is, and I'll reach out to him to find a way to have a chat. And so far, we have learned so much through these reach outs. So I can give 2 examples. One of them is I was reading a HBR, Harvard Business Review article on different business models. So one business model that Turtle Tree really looked up to was ARM Semiconductors. Basically, they are the biggest chip company in the world that doesn't make a single chip. because they focus more on a licensing and royalty model. They work with the Samsung, the Apple, all these big tech companies, and they were seen as the R&D hub of the entire tech industry, helping them build the architecture of their silicon chips. So I was really intrigued by this business model because they could keep their business capital light and focus on the licensing and royalty model. And I wanted that for Turtle Dream. So I reached out to one of the writers for this HBR review, who happened to be a researcher from SMU, which is my university. And she connected us with the founder of ARM. So there were 7 founders of ARM Semiconductors, and we reached out to one of them. And we have been engaging recently. He's been sharing with us his experiences, certain pitfalls to avoid, how that licensing model should look like. So we've learned a lot from these advisors, these mentors. Another one is I wanted to find out more about milk, right? So looking at different different groups or RIs all over the world. One that stood up was the Smithsonian Institute. They have a milk bank that spans across different animals, different mammals. So we reached out to one of the scientists there, and he shared some of the craziest stories. I'll share some of them with you. So, for example, you know the armadillo animal, he has a really hard back. The armadillo milk has a lot of calcium in it. But if you try to express the milk through the armadillo nipple, the nipple would calcify. So as a result, the protein content of armadillo milk is very high to be able to encapsulate the calcium protein so that the milk can be smoothly expressed out. So anyway, this is a fun fact. The point is, please feel free to reach out to anybody you think could help you in this whole process. If you want to brainstorm with me, I'm happy to have a chat with you as well. Usually I spend about 1 to 2 hours every Saturday talking to new founders or anybody who wants to learn more about the industry. My LinkedIn is on this page here. Yeah, this will be my top advice. Talk to as many people as possible.
Great. So we have another question from Sanjaya. She asked if could you share more about the challenges on funding and investors?
Sure. So for us in the early days, it was very challenging. Before we closed our first pre-seed round of funding, we talked to over 80 investors. It's all about a numbers game. There are hundreds, even thousands of investors out there. But there would be only a handful that would be a good fit in terms of their mandate as well as your goal as a founder. So really talk to as many people as possible so that you can widen the top of your funnel. And as you kind of go down the funnel, investors would rule you out. You would rule some investors out. Then you start to build a good rapport, and you would know what kind of investors would work for you. So some of the challenges really is talking to all these people. It's really a full-time job and more. We have very long days, but Max and I we try to talk to everybody. We don't rule anybody out before we have a conversation with them. We are very humble. We are still learning. So even though an investor might not be a right fit or might not be investing in you, but you want them to have a good impression of you. You want to be able to learn from them as well through the conversation. So try to talk to as many people as possible.
Great. Any other questions? Yes, Ivan, you have a question?
So yeah, I have a question. So because your background is not in this biotech or like tech in general, right? Like, so like could you maybe share your experience on how you from like having 2 co-founders who are not who don't have the tech background in this industry, especially from just an idea to actually like building up a whole team of these experts to actually develop like something that can actually be used?
Sure. So the whole journey was really interesting, right? And I think um I would have, so one writer, one author that I really like is the co-founder of Angel List. He has a book that is free online, an ebook. His name is Naval, and he talks a lot about natural curiosity. So one thing that we do really well is we are very open to learning. So when we had an idea, we started to execute it, um, actionable by actionable, right? Reach out to people, we talk to friends, and we start to build our knowledge base around the science and the technology. And because we're so open to talking to people, we're not we're not confined to just one technology. We're open to think outside the box and reach out and bring in different technologies. um, so when we first started, it was quite a challenge. It was a massive learning curve, but now we realize that it's really to our benefit that we don't have these preconceived notions of what can or cannot be done. Because I mean, there are 7 billion people on this planet. If there is a challenge out there, I'm kind of sure somebody else has tried to tackle it, or is tackling it, or have tackled it. So try to talk to as many people as possible so you can push the frontiers of our collective knowledge as mankind. um, don't try to solve the problem on your own, because talking to people, you realize that other people have tackled it, and more people, there are more pros out there that you haven't spoken to. um, so that is one thing that we've realized. And what we did quite well was the ability to reach out, convince people that this is something that is possible, telling the story, and bring people in from different parts of the world to help us to accelerate our R&D. So at the moment, we have several collaborations with global partners, not just from research institutes or universities, but also private companies. And you start to recognize which are the um, which are the good better fits for your company. And at some point, once you reach a certain point, you want to invest more in certain of these technologies or these individuals. I hope that answers your question.
Yep, that answered my question. Thank you.
Great.
Any other questions? Okay, I think we have one question. When you first start the company, and what was your startup capital funds that was required to get this project started?
Sure. So when we first started, right, we stayed kind of low profile for about 6 to 9 months, just because we wanted to make sure we validated the technology, we filed our patents before we came out to raise funds. So when we first started, Max and I put in about $500,000 of our own money. And we specifically chose to set it up in Singapore because we got quite a lot of funding or support from the Singapore government, and as a Singapore-based company. And also the burn rate would be a lot lower than if you try to do this in, say, San Francisco. So we did had to put in quite a bit of money when we first started. But if you are a biotech startup founder or you're keen to join this, there are a few VCs who run accelerators in this region. One of them is our pre-seed investor Level VC. They have an accelerator. In Singapore, there is Ag Funder. There is also a Big Idea Ventures. In the Bay Area, there's even more of these accelerators. So if you are in the food tech or biotech area, you can please feel free to reach out. Perhaps I can point you the right direction as well. Oh, and Turtle Tree, when we first started, we did not join any accelerators just because the timing was not right for them. They have certain batches that would happen at certain points in the year, so it wasn't the right fit for us. But we do have friends who started on those accelerators, and some were successful to raise funds following the accelerators.
Great. Right. Any other questions? All right. So I think we have pretty much, we've ended the session a bit earlier. If there's no other questions, then perhaps we could call it a day. And I think you can always reach out to Feng Ru. Her LinkedIn is there. Maybe Feng Ru has something to shout out, something that Turtle Tree is doing. What is this certain things they're looking for, or maybe some people would like to reach out, or you would like them to be part of your company or sorts. So you may feel free to take this last 5 minutes just to give a shout out. Yeah.
Sure. So in the next 12 months, Turtle Tree, we will be launching quite a few initiatives. I don't think I can share more now, but please follow us on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, always happy to have a chat with you guys. In my whole journey, I've had quite a lot of people who's reached out, lent me a helping hand, pointed me the right direction. So I'm happy to pass it on to anybody who wants to some advice as well, or just to bounce off some ideas. So please feel free to follow us on LinkedIn and our exciting updates for the next year.
Okay. Sorry, there's one more question. As a founder compared to being a start in a corporate previously, believe there's a lot more of like emotional stress, mental stress, and all that. How do you then handle when this thing arises? Yeah.
To be honest, right, the amount of stress is the same as in my corporate life. I mean, okay, the intensity of the stress is the same, although the amount of time is less in corporate lah, of course, because like you get to hang out with your friends more. um, but how I deal with stress is I eat chocolates, or I cycle. So I go on my Sunday long 50 to 70-kilometer rides. Uh, I don't meditate, but I've heard it's good for you. And the reason why I don't meditate is because I've tried a few times, and my mind starts to wander off. And I think maybe I just need to try harder, but I've heard that helps. And but for me, another way of meditation is really cycling, because you do one motion and you keep repeating that motion for miles and miles and miles, and you think about and you get to unravel the challenges um, that are happening at work or at home. So that has helped me to solve quite a few problems. um, yeah, or talking to friends, family, that helps as well.
Great. Yep. We have one other question.
Alright.
But probably not a very good time to ask. But it's, now that it's COVID-19, right? And previously before COVID-19, you were working in offices, and now working remotely. How is that pose a challenge for a biotech company like yourself?
Sure. I'm not sure which city you are asking the question from. But we were for us, we have been quite fortunate here in Singapore, because Singapore is so small, right? And COVID, everyone was even. I mean, the whole food security was highlighted. So during the COVID period, we actually had to appeal to Enterprise Singapore, and they have granted us the essential business labeling. So we have been able to keep our labs open throughout the whole period. Of course, we as business peeps, we can't go back to the office during the lockdown. but our scientists could continue work. We didn't really have to freeze down our cells, which would take several weeks to revive again if that happened. So our labs were allowed to continue while the business folks stay at home. Currently, everybody is back in the office, but when we were back at home, the business folks were at home. That was really challenging. I have to admit, not just on a communication with employees' point of view, but also it gets really boring at home, and it's only these four walls that you keep looking at. So that was really challenging for me, and I know the people around me. um, so we're just fortunate we got out of it. But back then, I tried to again run around my block, tried to relieve stress by cycling. um, but if you guys unfortunately still are kind of stuck at home, again, I would encourage you to reach out to people on LinkedIn. Currently, a lot of cities are still in a lockdown, so people are very willing to have a Zoom chat, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, just to share their experiences, their ideas. And I mean, today in LinkedIn, in the world of LinkedIn, it's so easy to connect to anyone anywhere else in the world. So this is a good time to bounce your ideas off of people if you want to.
Great. Thank you, Feng Ru. And I think, just to sum it up, I think today you really shared a lot about the benefits of being in a corporate and how that could help you shorten your learning curve when you're starting up. Also give you the initial capital, especially when doing a more deep tech company, which requires more intensive amount of capital, and also about the curiosity, right? So I think that these are some key takeaways that we have from today's session with Feng. So thank you so much. Thanks everyone for joining us both on Zoom and also on Facebook, YouTube. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, everyone. Add me on LinkedIn.
Yes, please feel free to add Feng on LinkedIn. I think you can follow the three labs on LinkedIn. They are really active. Many key updates you can find from the LinkedIn.
Great. Thanks, Jaren.
You maybe we just take